All right, folks, last one for the day. Uh, I honestly can't read this crap and not go insane too much. But this one I just had to talk about because we have someone who is a terror apologist demanding terrorists not be killed. Okay? There has not been a declaration of war. The assassination of a terrorist is not an act of war because we know that Soleimani was in Iraq helping to either supply, send people to act, or just plan an assault on our embassy in Baghdad. We know that Soleimani has been instrumental in the death of hundreds and hundreds of Americans. Okay, Obama, for 8 years, ordered drone strikes and military action, and none of the Democrats said a word because they don't care about it. What they care about is power. Okay, this is something, honestly, that, I mean, the only proper response to someone who is demanding the president be hamstrung in his constitutional authority to defend the U.S. against our enemies who are trying to kill us. I mean, I can only go back and think of Foghorn Leghorn.
Look, sister, is any of this filtering through that little blue bonnet of yours?
Yes.
Nice girl, but about as sharp as a sack of wet mice.
Honestly, though, I mean, even if I were able to say that to Omar, she'd probably just call me a bigot. Because we have Talib, who, as soon as she was announced the victor, she said we're going to impeach the mother effer. We have Omar, who ran in a district that is just flooded with refugees who have been given the vote. And she is not representing Minnesota. She is not representing her district. She is not representing the U.S. She is representing the country she came from, which is in the Middle East and a terror sponsor. She's been very vocal against Israel when they defend their border and defend their country. She's very vocal right now that Iran should be apologized to because they employed a terrorist who helped kill Americans, and we acted. When we sent a dog into a cave before we killed al-Baghdadi, she was just horrified at the terror and fear that must have been going through all of the minds of those killed, as opposed to thinking about all the Americans who would not die because al-Baghdadi was killed. We need to stop the insanity. Okay, this is something, honestly, it's very simple. And I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I've talked about this before, but I want to talk about it again. So it's really the only thing we can do. One of the things that I've been vocal on Twitter and here is that I am part of a movement to call an Article 5 Convention of States. Okay, there are two ways to amend the U.S. Constitution, and that is through Congress or through a convention. Both require the same thing. Okay, in Congress, it requires a two-thirds vote in both houses. Okay, so both houses have to pass an amendment by two-thirds. For a convention, two-thirds of the states, which is what a two-thirds vote in each house would represent, must agree to call a convention. Then you must have the vote pass that convention to send a proposed amendment to the states, where three-quarters of the 50 states must ratify said amendment. Currently, the Convention of States project is advocating for three specific amendments. Fiscal responsibility. Basically, we want to put the U.S. on the Dave Ramsey plan, act your wage. Okay, we don't want robbing from Peter to pay Paul so that Social Security is useless. We don't want, well, we have to do it, so we'll just keep spending and we'll print more money. We want fiscal responsibility. We have to practice it here in our homes every day. Why shouldn't the country? The second would be for term limits for Congress. Pardon me. There are those who say that the idea of term limits was only to prevent Roosevelt from being elected for a fourth term. That's possibly what started the idea, but Roosevelt passed away before he could run for a fourth term. It's ironic because Roosevelt was a Democrat and expanded socialist programs such as the TVA and others during the Great Depression. But why should the person who enforces the law be limited on how long they can serve, but not those who make the law? I would personally prefer to see Congress limited, in the case of senators, to 2 terms, and in the case of the House of Representatives, to 3, maybe 4 terms. Okay, the House comes up more often. There it is a shorter term, so maybe 4 terms, 8 years. The Senate, 6-year terms, so I would say 2 terms. That is a decade plus. But you're out after your second. Now, I like the man, I respect the man, but Louis Gohmert has now been in office since 2004. He's been in office going on 16 years this year. In the House of Representatives, okay, that's 8 terms. Louis is doing great things. And even with that, I would say he needs to come home. He's done his job. And term limits will not destroy Congress, as Steyer has said, but then called for term limits. An Article 5 convention will not destroy the Constitution, as Steyer lies. Okay? Steyer is a big government man, and he is going to continue lying to keep all the power in D.C. He knows term limits will never pass Congress, because Congress will never limit their own power. But then we have a third resolution, a third amendment we're supporting. And that is very simply, the Constitution means what it says. Okay? We see people regularly say that the Second Amendment only means that you have the right to keep and bear the firearms that were available and proliferated in the 1770s. It's incorrect, because we have writings in the Federalist Papers from the founders that say that the average American citizen ought to be as well armed as the military that one may one day be ordered to subjugate them. Literally means if I have the money, I should be able to buy an F-35 or an A-10 or an M1A tank or anything else that the military has. Now, yes, it is extremely hard for anyone but the government to own million-dollar tanks and billion-dollar planes and all that. But that is literally what the founders thought and said. You can also go back and look up the Puckle gun. It was a crew-served weapon, but it was an early machine gun. Rapid fire. Look up Italian repeating rifles that were in their infancy, but were beginning to be researched and produced. They're nowhere near what they are today, but still, firearms technology was already advancing at that time. The reason that the colonial army used muskets and flintlock pistols is that's what the average colonist, the average person in the colonies, could afford to own on their own. There was no colonial army in an official sense. It was, we're fighting for our independence, bring your guns and fight. And they brought them, and they fought, and then they went home. That is why the founders wrote the Second Amendment the way they did. And I bring this up rather often. The First Amendment does not mean you're limited to printing presses of the 1770s and standing on a street corner and writing with iron gall ink with quill and parchment as your forms of speech. The founders could never have envisioned how far technology would advance in just 240 years. From writing letters that were slowly delivered by horseback messenger between cities, to instant worldwide communication, to social media and other forms of speech. The idea that a protest was not just people forming a group and signing a petition and presenting it in person to their representative, but you can do that all over the country in a matter of days with the internet. And when I bring that up, it's amazing to me because people will say, well, no, they wouldn't want to limit speech. They would just accept that the way we can express ourselves has changed. But when it comes to firearms, well, no, they had no idea firearms would ever change. They thought muskets were the only thing that would ever exist. So in the same encounter with a liberal, the founders were so brilliant they could easily envision social media and worldwide communication and telephones and email and all of these things. But they were so ignorant they did not believe firearms would ever advance beyond muskets. It's one or the other. You can't have both. And that's why we need that amendment that says, what does that constitutional amendment say? Okay, that's what it means. No more of this, well, this one really means this, but it doesn't mean what you think, because what you think would let you have more freedom, and I don't like that. And we're seeing the effects of this in Virginia right now, where Northam is trying to disarm his people and basically rule. And it's going to backfire badly. But we need these. So please, I'll link, I always link in description to the Convention of States. Please check it out. Okay, I'm not going to say that I only want conservatives to join. I want everyone to join because we need the debate. Okay, we need to unite as a people and tell Congress, you're no longer going to rule us as tyrants. We, the people, hold the true power. But let me know what you think. Again, remember, keep it civil. We do not learn from argument, only from debate. And also, please remember to like the video and hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with new content as it is posted. And who knows, maybe one day I can actually make a go of this. Until next time, everyone have a wonderful day.